Hyper Bicycle Company, I know that name well because here at KevCentral I've reviewed countless Hyper bikes sold at Walmart. A couple of those even had carbon fiber frames, but this is not a Walmart bike. This Hyper is called the Mod29XC. XC stands for cross country. It has a carbon fiber frame and a list of impressive, or at least looks like it would be impressively spec'd. This is sold direct to consumer via the Hyper website. So it's a step up, and I've been very excited waiting to unbox this. I've had it for multiple months, but I wanted to complete my Project X29, my Walmart Hyper Carbon 29 modified bike, so I can compare these back to back. But I will admit, in the back of my mind when I see this, I'm thinking about those carbon fiber Walmart bikes, and I'm curious to see if this direct to consumer model will be packaged the same. And I will admit, I've seen more impressive packaging, but this is definitely way above the big box bikes. Strategically placed foam, it's well protected, even including triple wrapping around the tube frames. It's enough packaging that the bike made it through without a scratch or any issues. Out of the box eye catchers, number one, the seat post, one of the few assembly required components. Now this post is 31.6 diameter, or at least that's how it's labeled. On their website they say 30.9. Assembly required, installing the seat post, the handlebars, and the front wheel, where right away see one of the big ticket items. Fully assembled, this looks, well, good. The carbon fiber frame, seamless and smooth. This is, I'm going to say, bike shop and not over the top. For the theming of the bike, that'll mean something to regular viewers. There's a lot here, so let's just jump right into it. Starting up top at the handlebars, these are wide, 780 millimeters wide, 780 by 31.8. There's a 6-degree sweep and a 15 millimeter rise. Snafu branded, these bars also have printed degree markers, a small detail that I always appreciate. So Snafu on the bars and Snafu on the grips. 130 millimeter lock-on grips. They have a subtle spike grip pattern, and beside that right grip, a shifter with a clear indicator window. It has an orange indicator but no numbering. The shifter is a Shimano Deore, some people say Deore, however you want to pronounce it. It's an 11-speed trigger shifter. Also up top, the hydraulic brake levers, obviously. These are Tektro disc brakes, nothing but a grip on the right side. Would also mention that the bars and practically everything else on the bike alloy, maybe aside from the spokes. This is an alloy and carbon bike. Naturally, that makes the stem also alloy, and the branding makes it Snafu. It's a 70 millimeter stem with a 7-degree rise. A headset with sealed bearings, and that bottom bearing, it's larger because it's part of a tapered head tube. That tapered head tube is housing the steerer from the tapered fork. And this is an air fork with a manual lockout and 100 millimeters of travel. The brand SR Sun Tour. The model Raidon 32. Well, that 32, it's for the 32 millimeter stanchions, and on top of being an air fork, another notable feature here is the boost through axle. All 15 by 110 millimeters of it. And that axle is shooting through a Novatec hub, which is part of the Novatec wheel set. A wheel set that comprises Novatec 29-inch 25 model, boost-spaced, tubeless compatible alloy rims. Wrapped around those, Kenda 29 by 2.2 tires. These are knobbies, 30 TPI knobbies. They're not super aggressive, more in line with the cross-country naming. And that's Novatec wheels front and rear. And at the rear, the Novatec free hub, that's fit with a big dinner plate of a cassette. That's part of a decently spec'd drivetrain. Well, pedals excluded, though I will give them credit for at least trying to make something that resembles pegs out of what is otherwise just plastic Snafu pedals. The crankset, it's nice. It's made by ProWheel, the model MPX11, and it has 175mm crank arms and an MPX 30-tooth narrow wide chainring. That chainring, it's made of 70-75 aluminum, meaning lightweight and strong. There's even a crankset accessory. How about this Falcon GYR chain guide? Completing the drivetrain up front, a 73mm external bearing ProWheel bottom bracket. We've already seen the Deore 11-speed shifter, and that connects to more Shimano, specifically the Deore 11-speed derailleur. This model features a clutch and works through that big dinner plate cassette, which is also Shimano Deore. 11 cogs, each with its own tooth count, the highest of which being 11 tooth. The lowest, that easy low gear, 51 tooth, which is nice. Oh, and the back axle, it's also like the front, meaning boost. 12 by 148 boost to be exact, making this a true boost frame, a boost carbon fiber frame. And Let's talk about that frame for a second. It's available in multiple sizes. This is a medium, which I measured at 17 inches. The frame features internal cable routing, including this unused port, which is for a dropper post. BYOD, bring your own dropper. The frame is sleek looking. I like the matte black with the minimal blue graphics, and of course that it's carbon fiber. And then that dropper ready, which relates to the next thing, this seat post, the alloy Snafu branded seat post. As I've already mentioned, the site says 30.9, but mine's 31.6, whichever. It's easy to find droppers for this size. As far as the seat, it's the usual Hyper Snafu branded saddle. Keep it classy. You gotta love the Snafu branding. I don't blame them for using it at every opportunity. Here's a look at the lower half of the hydraulic brakes. The rotor up front, 160 millimeters. I even have the line lengths. Up front, 850 millimeters. To the rear, 1500. The rear also has a 160 millimeter rotor. Here's a look at the quick release lever for the rear boost through axle on this carbon frame with its 12x148 rear spacing. I love saying that. Let's talk even more about this frame, like the fact that these are built to the same specs as some of the big brand carbon frames sold in Europe. I'm told even on the same assembly line. The specs, I have those too. For instance, the head tube angle, it's 69 degrees. The fork offset, 51 millimeters. This is the full technical drawing. I'll even crop it in a bit so you can pause and pick out the information that you need. Looking at all the numbers here and then seeing the components and the bike firsthand, I'm liking what I see on a bike that currently sells for $1699.99. So naturally, I couldn't wait to get this on the trail. Before I get to that, I want to get to some boring stuff first. It's boring but important. Like the fact that out of the box, I made 0 adjustments. The bike shifted perfectly through all gears right out of the box. Now they could have saved a few dollars and went with something like a microshift advent, which would have been fine, but I appreciate the refinement of the Deore. What about the Tektro hydraulic disc brakes? Well, they work as I expected, perfectly out of the box, and added bonus, no noise. Drivetrain, that 51-tooth low gear makes for super easy climbing, and the Deore smoothness means super shifting even while under a slight load. Many people are like me and focus on the low gear. We want easy climbing over top speed, but some people do focus on the high. They want speed. And that makes sense on a cross-country bike because a lot of people race these. So what did my butt dyno say? Well, it tells me that this bike can get moving quite well. From my perspective, I could probably go even faster if the tires had slightly more aggressive knobbies. Granted, what you're seeing is also on damp soil, so factor that in. Still, this moves quite well. You've seen the geometry for this bike, so let me say, as far as the ride goes, I'm in a good place on this bike. And when I say I'm in a good place on a bike with 29-inch wheels and 780mm bars, everything definitely has to be working together. Fitment and geometry are working well for me. Now I won't get into it here because I have an upcoming video where this goes head to head with my modified Hypercarbon X29, but aside from being slightly more cautious with these tires, which aren't really that bad at all, for now I'll just say that I'm happy with how this rides and that it's very familiar to me. Also that the Raidon fork, it works well. No flexing or issues of any kind thus far. How about this carbon frame? Am I concerned with riding a $1,700 carbon bike? Well, not really at all. I mean, I've ridden a $700 carbon bike. I'll say that I'm as confident with this frame as I was on a $6,000 carbon bike that I had a couple of years ago. This passes my rudimentary flex tests even when I use a tree for leverage. It's nice and solid. I didn't even have any clearance issues with the 175mm crank arms. 0 pedal strikes. Another plus is that the bike is light enough that I can hop over small routes with such minimal effort that it's hardly noticeable. How light is it? My scales say 28.2 pounds. If you've made it this far into the video, congratulations, you're going to get a little bonus. I actually edited this in today at the last moment. I was out on the trail with a follow-up ride on this bike, and I came across the head of the trail nonprofit. They're in the final stages of completing the newest trails, professionally cut at Wildwood. These trails are still under construction and they're roped off, but I was given permission to take a first look. And I'm telling you right now, these are going to be amazing. professionally cut with some quick and flowy ups and downs. The goal was to keep the grade at a certain point, so the ride is more about reward than effort. Even though I am 0% familiar with where the turns and curves are, I can 100% say that they absolutely got this right. And the beauty, there are more trails like this being worked on at Wildwood, and this bike is ready to eat them up. So after the first ride, here are my takeaways. Let me give you my summaries, all my likes, and if there are any nitpicks that I have. The first thing that stands out to me is the component selection on this bike. This is a $1,700 bike with a carbon fiber frame. Honestly, I would have thought it would have been a micro shift instead of a Deore, stuff like that, but this is a well-spec'd bike. This is a very well-done drivetrain. Pro Wheel and Shimano, that's a good combo apparently, especially with that range. The 51 tooth, super easy climbing, I'm happy. And how about a tapered fork from the factory? I've reviewed bikes that had aluminum frames and cost more than this, and had tapered head tubes, but were adapted for a straight steer fork. It's impressive that we get this on a carbon frame at this price. Even more impressive when you consider that it's boost, and not just boost up here on the fork, but we're talking boost front and rear. On a carbon frame that not only feels good while riding, but I think it looks great. And that dropper-ready internal cable routing with multiple sizing options so riders can get what fits. Perfect, especially at this price. Us consumers though, we can be picky, we can be demanding, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that would have liked to have seen 180mm rotors, at least for the front disc brake. I'll pick at the tires, cross country, I get it, but slightly more aggressive knobbies I would not have objected to. Still, these work well for starter tires, and there's a bit of extra room for slightly more width if that's your thing. Plastic pedals aside, that's really about all I can nitpick because I'm genuinely impressed with how this bike is equipped, how it looks, and most importantly, how it rides. The carbon fiber is pretty much icing on the cake. Next, we're going to see how this stacks up against my other hypercarbon bike, Project X29, the one I just completed. For now though, I want to hear from you. What do you think about a $1,700 carbon bike? Let me hear what you think. I'll put a link to this bike down in the description if you want to go check it out. And if you found this video informative or entertaining, don't forget to hit that thumbs up or the thumbs down, however you feel, and make sure you're subscribed, all that. Thanks so much for watching KevCentral. I appreciate each and every viewer. Have a great day.